I don't know about you, but when it comes to mealtime, I quite like a bit of routine. Same breakfast every morning, and I think if I weren't living with other people, I would probably have very similar lunches and dinners throughout the week. But when I look at Exodus chapter 16, I do think the idea of the same thing every night for 40 nights, or 40 years, sorry, just staggering, just a bit scary, really. I can't imagine it. Well, I'm James, and today we're going to try something a little bit different. Rather than going through the chapter and seeing what we think it means, we're going to watch a little bit of Hemant's most recent video, his treatment of the chapter, and just focus on a couple of comments. Just think them through and explore whether there are some alternative thoughts to be had. So I'm going to play that for you now, and then we'll come back and we'll have a think about it's verses 13 through 16, particularly the manna from heaven.
So they were expecting food and drink, and they got birds and dew droplets? What a disappointment. Also, quail, like other birds, migrate. So enjoy the food, I guess, because you're not going to have it for long. Actually, you know what Christian scholars say those thin flakes were, under the assumption that any of this actually happened? They say it's probably the dried poop left behind from insects that fed on the trees in that region. It's the only thing that would fit the description. That is what they say God gave the Israelites as a gift. And in case you're wondering, an omer is about 3 pounds of food, or roughly 3 liters, give or take, because even the Bible didn't use the metric system.
So there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot we could talk about. I don't know much about the migration patterns of quail, but I suppose if they do move around quite a bit, then the Bible's claim here is that God had caused them to be so present and so regularly available that the Israelites could rely on them for food. On the question of what the manna was, it's interesting. The passage talks regularly about the word bread. I don't know which Christian scholars Hemant is referring to. There are a number who would like to interpret passages of the Bible in such a way as to make the miracles natural, to make them natural. I'm not convinced that the manna from heaven that is being spoken of here was insect poo. And I think there's an interesting thought to be had. You know, if we want to test to see whether the Bible is true, that's great, because, you know, I think God wrote to us to challenge us, to explore what he's got to say and to see if it makes sense. But realistically, after all of these previous miracles in Exodus, and, you know, that's just one small section of the whole Bible, whether or not God made bread out of thin air, more or less, feels like a very small fry in the grand scheme of things. I'm personally not convinced that it was insect poo. And the reality is that, you know, if I were trying to discredit it, it might be more easy to do so if I were told, or if I were to take it seriously and say that God caused bread to exist where there wasn't any, and bread that doesn't look like the sort of thing we would necessarily call bread. And when we get caught up with strange interpretations of the things going on in these verses, what we miss is the big picture that Moses is trying to tell us in this story. You know, at the end of chapter 15, God told Israel how to follow him, to trust him, to hear his word and obey. And at the beginning of chapter 16, they're grumbling. They're imagining false versions of a brilliant time in Egypt when they could lay around and eat bread and meat all over the place. You know, and yet God doesn't destroy them. He doesn't take them apart. He doesn't punish them as they might deserve. But instead he says, I'm going to give you bread and I'm going to give you food. I'm going to give you everything you need for this journey that we're going on. When we focus in on strange interpretations like, oh, this is insect poo, we miss the reality that God is a God who wants a relationship with his people, and he provides and cares for them in a radical way, even when they are disobeying him. I would love to know what you think about this section, this chapter, and this slightly different format. If you've got any thoughts on that section, or indeed any of the things that Hemant raised in his video, I'd love to know your thoughts and to keep the conversation going. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.